you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
Good morning, and welcome to the June the 6th, 2023 edition of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Now, we would love for you to be a part of the show, and you can do so a couple of ways. One of the ways that you can do that is to call this number, 516-453-9921, and press the number 1 button if you would have a comment or a question for Mr. Fuller, and you will get in rotation, and we can do that. You can also Gmail me if you choose. The numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. And you can also do this. You could join the chat room if you just want conversation. And all you have to do for that is to go to blogtalkradio.com. You want to click on programs. And once you click that on, then the variety of programs will come up. But you want to get the Produce Justice show. You click on that, and then when that comes up, there's a little box in there to indicate that you can go to the chat room and get into the chat. Now, I would ask that when you're in the chat room that you do not use the chat room to ask me a question to ask Mr. Fuller. All you have to do is use the previous two, the phone line, and also the Gmail. Other than that, you will be straight. Okay. I think that's all that I have this morning for you. Okay. Oh, yes, this one's very important. The book that Mr. Fuller will be discussing today can be obtained by going to producejustice.com. Producejustice.com. The name of the book is called The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. Let me repeat that again. The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. And you can get that by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. Okay. I think that's it. So let's get on with the show. Let me say hello, Mr. Fuller. Mr. Fuller, good morning, and how are you?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
Okay, you are still learning. Okay, this part of the program, we give Mr. Fuller a chance to say what's on his mind, something he's observed or something he wants to say. So we called this the thoughts and expressions on the mind of Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. Mr. Fuller, what is on your mind this morning, June the 6th, 2023?
What's on my mind is a little notation I have right here on my desk, and it says compensatory code. That's a note that I made in response to somebody's letter some time ago, back in March or something. It's kind of I won't even deal with what the letter was really about, but it prompted me to make a notation on the letter. It had to do with name calling, black people calling each other names. And part of the code, what I call the compensatory counter-racist code, is never call anybody by any name or title except the name and title that that person wants to be called. That's fundamental. That's one of the 10 stops. If you do that, stop doing it. Never, under any circumstance, call anybody by any name or title except the name or title that the person calls him or herself. Now, if you're talking about something that the person is doing, then you address what the person is doing, and then you discuss why they're doing what they're doing, because there are reasons why people do things. But you don't get in any kind of name call and say, well, that makes you, because you're doing that, you're this type of person. You don't make those kind of judgments. You just ask questions, let the person answer the question, and then you address whatever the answer to the question is that you ask. And that way you don't get into any kind of name calling. You don't put a label on the person. You can put a label on what's being done and then discuss that according to logic. That's if you want to have conversation rather than arguments. You definitely don't do any name calling. You don't do any name calling of people who are not even in the conversation, people who are absent from the conversation. You don't call that person by any kind of name except the name or title that the person wants to be called. But address what is being said or done. That's the codified procedure. And then I have another note here that says, one of the best questions, because the code says always try to ask the best questions. Get right to the core of whatever it is you want to know. And one of the best questions, in my opinion, to ever ask during the existence of the system of racism, white supremacy, is why haven't I solved the race problem? And that's a question that you can ask anybody at any time. I mean, even if the subject's not even race, you can bring that subject up in a conversation. Say, by the way, why haven't you solved the race problem? You ever thought about you solving the race problem? Have you ever thought about you solving the race problem? And then you can go on and tell them, if you want to, that I've thought about it, and I've asked myself, why haven't I done it? That's a question. It's not, an argument or anything like that. Just out of the blue, you might say. That's a standard question. If you're interested in the race issue at all, directly or indirectly, the question you ask yourself before you even ask anybody else, why haven't I solved the race problem? So Neely Fuller asked myself that question this morning. And I searched for an answer according to Neely Fuller. Why hasn't Neely Fuller solved the race problem? I've been here long enough. Why haven't I done it? So my answer was, it's got to be just one of two reasons, or maybe both reasons combined. One, I haven't wanted to, and the other is, I don't know how, if you follow the logic. Here in the year 2023, in June, why hasn't Neely Fuller, however you want to put it in correct English, solved the race problem? Everybody's talking about, or a great number of people are talking about the race problem, the race problem, the race problem. Goes on and on and on. Gets in the way of everything. Slows down everything. Starts arguments and killings where there was no before. None. Why hasn't Neely Fuller Jr. talking about it a long time. Why hasn't he done it? And I just come up with two answers. If you're going to always start with the truth, he doesn't want to, or he doesn't know how. There might be other answers, but that's it. He doesn't want to solve the race problem. He's out here talking about it, but does he really want to solve it? And the other is, he doesn't want he doesn't want to, he doesn't. Then the next answer I come up with, I don't know how. I want to do it, but I don't know how I want to, I don't know how to do what I want to do. That's it. The race problem is a problem. There's a solution to every problem. Every problem that people make, according to logic, people can solve. That's just the laws of the universe. Any problem that people make, people can solve it because they made it. Now, a problem that the creator of the universe makes, that's a different story altogether. But people don't create anything. They produce or they fashion what is already here. So if people make a problem, and the race problem is made by people, people can solve that problem. They're given the power to solve that problem because they were given the power to make the problem. Just a matter whether they choose to do so. So Neely Fuller talks about the race problem all the time, doing it now, coming on this program today, talking almost exclusively about the race problem. However, the race problem will cover all other problems, according to what Fuller says. You can't solve any problem without solving the race problem between people. That's in the code book that I've written. That's what this podcast is all about. You're not going to solve any problem among people of this planet without solving the race problem. Because the race problem is going to mess up anything else that you try to do in any area of activity. That's Neely Fuller's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what's on my mind this morning. And so that is something that you can ask anybody. I mean, all of the people, rather than argue a name call, just ask any person, white person, any black person, any person, why haven't you solved the race problem? I mean, somebody in Norway, you just ask them that right out of the blue. Sir, or ma'am, Ingrid, or whatever the person's name is, why haven't you solved the race problem? And don't interfere with the answer. Let them think about it and answer the question. They may say the same thing I just said, or something similar to it. I haven't wanted to. Well, I never thought about it. Well, I've thought about it, Neely Fuller has. That's why I'm talking about it. But does he really want to solve the race problem? Why hasn't he solved the race problem? Been talking about it like forever. Why haven't I done it? Well, the only other answer to that second question is he doesn't know how. Because if he knew how, it would have been solved. Duh. And that applies to everybody else. So everybody can ask themselves that question, and should, according to the code, every minute of the day if necessary. And it is necessary, according to logic, if you're going to solve any problem that you have at all. if you're a person of color. May not be a problem if you're a person classified as white. But enough white people are saying so that it is a problem with them. Particularly people walking around talking about something called woke or 1619 project or something like that. So a lot of white people now begin to say, yeah, that is a problem. You people need to stop it. You people, meaning the non-white people who are doing it, talking about there is a race problem. Stop talking about it. Find something else to do. And people like myself are saying something else like what? Every time I start searching for something to do that makes sense, I run into the race problem. That's what I say.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's on my mind.
Okay. Well, we thank you for that opening or introduction to the session for today. From the chat room, someone, Justice Warrior, agreed with you, saying, that's right. Ask white people why haven't they worked to solve the race problem. The onus is not on us to do it because we did not create the race problem to begin with. That was his thought. To reply or to that thought that since we did not create the race problem, why isn't the onus on us? Because of that, we did not create the problem? Asking you.
Well, that's something to think about. See, everything in solving a problem is about thought, speech, and action. You think first. Then you speak on what you're thinking about. And then you act on what conclusions you come to that you think call for action.
Mm-hmm.
Thought, speech, action. So you always start with the question. Is there a problem? What is the problem? How do you solve the problem? See, and that's right in line with thought, speech, and action. That's the last part, solving the problem. That's what you're aiming for. So what the caller is saying is logical. That's a logical sequence. Black people didn't create the race problem. The people who created the race problem are people who are classified as white, according to all evidence. If you want to use the word create, actually it's produce. Because people can't create anything.
Okay.
Only a creator can create. But people made an arrangement called the race problem. And they are a racial system, classifying people by race. So once you do that, you got to ask a logical question. Why are you classifying people by race, something called race? Say, well, we're going to do it according to the color of the person and classify that as a racial group. Well, why are you doing it? Well, we have a reason. Okay, well, what is the reason? Why are you doing it? Why is it necessary for people to be classified by race based on the color of the skin? Why is this a necessity? Is this a necessity? In order to do what? It's necessary in order to do what? See how one question leads to another? That's the magic of questions.
Mm-hmm.
The whole idea is to keep asking questions and getting the correct answers. It'll take everybody right where they need to go, that procedure. That's one of the main things I want to get across all the time on this program, on this podcast and everything else. And everybody on the planet should be doing that. asking questions, thousands of them, about just one thing. So you're going to have 1,000 questions about just one thing? You might have 10,000 about one thing. Until when? Until you get all the answers. You don't get answers until they are correct answers. Because the incorrect answer is not an answer. That's a response, but that's not an answer.
Yes, sir. All righty. To the phone lines we go. Let's go to New York. And I believe we're going to do Tess first. Tess, good morning. You are on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Good morning. I have a VGQ followed by a brief question. My VGQ is to thank Mr. Fuller, Mr. Bobby, Robert, Sharon, Moonpot, and all those involved in making the show available to us. As well, a thank you to the listeners and those in the chat room. For the next several weeks, I will be absent from these broadcasts, but have faith there will be continued success. My question is as follows. There's an ongoing clash between non-white individuals and their ideas of being a high-valued man. Mr. Fuller, can a non-white male be a high-valued man under the system of white supremacy? Thank you.
Not according to logic. You said you used the term high value.
That's right.
Okay. Well, that's a definition. I mean, that's an introduction of a couple of words that I don't have in my word guide. So the codified procedure is you have to explain what a high-valued man is.
Yes, sir.
Right. That would be the logical question. I didn't invent that term. I don't know who did. Maybe you did, and if you did, you can say so. But once you invent a term, you should have a definition for the term you invented. That's the codified procedure. So what do you mean when you say high-valued man?
Yes, sir. The definition of a high-value man would be one that is in a position of power, has more than, I would say, $100,000, maybe $200,000. These are definitions that I did not create the term high-value man, but these are definitions that been tossed around kind of loosely, but it's a man that is in a position of power and they have over a certain amount of money. Let's slow down so the entire audience will get it. A high-valued man, according to somebody, anonymous maybe, a high-valued man is a man in a position of power. That's number one. Is that correct? That's correct.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Number two, is that the end of it right there?
We could call that the end of it. That's the most accurate definition that I could think of logically.
Well, when did you first hear? That's why I say it's important for people to explain themselves. Like Neely Fuller should explain himself. If I use a term that nobody's heard before, you better believe I got to be. That's a requirement of the code. I got to be able to explain that term and where I got it or where I first heard it. Or even if I don't remember, I just simply say that. I don't remember where I've heard that term. But one of the first things you're supposed to do when you hear it, according to the code, is ask not necessarily who invented the term, but ask what the term means. And then you can ask who invented the term if you just want that as a reference, because that would be the person, whomever that person was, if it was the person that did it, should be able to explain in detail what a high-valued man is. And so you said that you didn't invent the term, so should have asked the person who you heard it from. If you can remember who that was, you can still do it. What that high-valued man is. Otherwise, you're speculating. Or you're giving your definition, which you can do according to the code. You can say, well, your idea. Yes, sir.
So, looking online, there's an actual definition by a gentleman named Kevin Samuels, who passed away. There's 6 traits of a high-value man, if you would like me to go over those.
Well, how long would it take you?
It'll take me about 2 minutes, sir.
Oh, okay. It's worth 2 minutes to get a term straight. Go right ahead.
Yes, sir. Mr. Kevin Samuel has 6 traits of a high-value man. 1, making money. Earn a minimum of $10,000 per month. 2, consistent success. Maintain a $100,000 yearly income for 3 to 5 years. 3, group acceptance. Be recognized by other high-value men. 4, strong network. Don't be a lone wolf. Surround yourself with people who share a growth mindset. 5, visibility. Have a career that people understand or recognize. No sketchy schemes. 6, utility. Help other people out, whether that's your family, friends, or company. So ends those 6 traits of a high-value man.
Oh, well, now, with that definition, and the question was, can a high-valued man exist in the system of white supremacy? I would say, without giving it a lot of deep thought, my first reaction is to say yes, according to the list you just gave. If the white supremacists want that black person to be a high-valued man, if they want it. A black person can be a whole host of things under any kind of title in the system of white supremacy, if the white supremacists want that. So you enumerated a number of things. He would have power, and with that kind of money, in 2023, he would be able to do more things than the average black person can now. And because a lot of those things you just said sound like offhand, without me actually seeing the whole list and studying it for a couple of days, it sounds like that would be pretty constructive. But they can only exist. Lots of things, lots of opportunities, lots of things, almost miracles can happen with a black person if the white supremacists want it to happen. If they want it to happen. But apparently the white supremacists don't want anything to happen with black people except a whole lot of ignorance, stupidity, and general destructive behavior. That's what they do. Mm-hmm. They applaud it, and they encourage it, and they're willing to pay high prices for it. Anything that doesn't make sense. Bring the black people in. After we have our meeting, then bring the black people in and tell them what type of world, what the world should look like from their stand, from their point of view. And then we give them the point of view that they should have. And then send them out. And then we laugh about it because we like what everybody wants. Fun, glory, and material comfort. And by keeping black people in this type of state, we get fun, we get glory, everybody looks up to us, we got a lot of material comfort out of making them into a bunch of garbage. And have them applaud being a bunch of garbage. Have them laughing and grinning and stomping their feet, clapping their hands about being a whole lot of nothing, a whole lot of valueless people. And that makes us feel good, because that's all it's really about, feeling good. The system of white supremacy.
Yes,
I
sir.
feel good when I mistreat people of color. I've heard actually people, a white man when I was in the Army, he said that outright. He said when they killed those two N-words down by the river the other day, talking about something that happened in South Carolina, he said, boy, that made me feel good.
Wow.
That rings in my ears to this very day.
Yes, sir.
I mean, he's sitting there saying that to both black and white people. Boy, that made me feel good.
Okay. All right. Well, Tess, thank you for your call. And with that, let's take a break here. You're listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. here, and we thank you for your listenership. Again, if you would like to be a participant, you can by calling 516-453-9921. Press the number 1 button, please, because I see, somebody did it. Brother Muko, good, glad you're on. But when you do call, press the number 1 button if you want to have a question or a comment. Also, if you are a first-time caller, please make sure you tell the call screener, go ahead and call the number, tell the call screener that you're a first-time caller, and we will fix it so that you are expedited, or at least your call, you will be heard, put it that way, okay? All righty. You can also send me a Gmail. The address is the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. And once I get it, it'll go into a rotation. And when it comes up, I'll let you know. And lastly, you can join the chat room by going to blogtalkradio.com. And then you want to click on where it says programs. And when you do that, of course, then a list of programs comes up. And the Produced Justice show is on there. You click that, and then there's a little space that you may join the chat. And most of the time, there are usually some good conversations that are going on in the chat room. And occasionally, as I have done earlier this morning, I will select one out, and sometimes I will have Mr. Fuller address that particular one. But do not use that as a template to ask me to ask Mr. Fuller questions. It's just not going to happen, Captain. Not today. So, but anyway, there are good questions on there and good topics that people discuss. Even I pick up some knowledge on that, too. Okay, with that in mind, let's see here. Oh, yes. Make sure that if you don't have the publication, the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, that's the book that Mr. Fuller has written. You can get that by going to producejustice.com. And when you do that, there's some other information on there. Past shows are on there and upcoming shows that are on there, particularly if Mr. Fuller is going to be on the Carl Nelson show. That information is usually on with the date and time of the show. And if they tell me in advance, then I will also announce it on this podcast, so that we will all know and hear what Mr. Fuller has to say when he's on the Carl Nelson show. But anyway, all the books and materials go to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. Okay. All righty. That's it. Put your name down. Okay, let's go back to the phone lines And let's go to Milwaukee. And get ready, Corey, if this will work. Okay, Corey, I think you are on. Okay, wait a minute. There you go. Corey, you're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
Mr. Fuller, I wanted to expound on what you were talking about in terms of asking ourselves and every other person why they haven't solved the race problem. Mr. Fuller, in your book, you give a sort of suggestion or a prescription for us as victims of white supremacy that we should use our thought, speech, and action to force the white supremacists to either produce justice or to eliminate all non-white people. So, Mr. Fuller, my question is this our part and duty and in eliminating racism, and the part that the white people play is we have to force them to eliminate it is the only way?
Yes, that's what the code is supposed to do. Influence white people, either directly or indirectly, to have to make the decision, we're going to do justice, meaning guarantee, is our goal going to be to guarantee that nobody's mistreated and that people who need help the most get the most constructive help. And that's all people throughout the planet, wherever we go. As white people, that's what we'll be known for. That we don't see, we can't stand to see anybody mistreated, and we're not going to be a part of that. No type of mistreatment, period. I mean, we're going to stop practicing racism. That's number one. Just stop doing it. We're going to guarantee that disappears. And then what's the best thing to replace racism with? Because racism has a utility. So we replace it with justice. Guarantee that no person is mistreated, and guarantee that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help, rather than glorifying mistreatment, glorifying death, which is what we have been doing. That's why we write all these detective novels and about violence. We glorify violence. We teach people early on. We're talking about what to teach young white people and what we don't want them to be taught. Well, we teach them about how to draw blood. I mean, one of the first things I learned in the system of white supremacy is about knights. Knights. Knights of the Round Table. And what do knights do? Do they till the soil? Do they build houses? Are they carpenters or bricklayers? No. Knights ride around on horses in suits of what? Armor. What's the armor for? That stuff is heavy. Well, it's to keep people from killing them. Well, why would people want to kill the knights? Because the knights are trying to kill them. Oh. And so these are people at 10 years old or 7 years old and you're going to school. These are the people that you're supposed to be bragging about or emulating. And then you're riding around, 16 years later, 16 years old from the time you're born, if you're black or white, looking for somebody to kill. Because that's what knights do. They get together around the round table and get instructions from the king about going out and killing people, conquering. Oh, and that's what you're supposed to learn. So all the white supremacists have to do, all the white people who don't consider themselves to be white supremacists, say, let's just stop this race thing. Let's stop it right this minute. Not 50 years from now, or 10 years from now, or it'll take a long time. You know, it doesn't take no time at all. All you got to do is what Spike Lee put in his movie. And that's another thing I really wanted to talk about today. Do the right thing. Do the right thing. That's all you got to think about. Any white person or any black person for that matter. All the teenage gangbangers out here. Just wake up this morning, since it's still morning where I am, or wherever you are on the planet, and say, from now on, I'm going to try my best just to fulfill those 4 words. I know how to use 4-letter words, but I'm going to start concentrating on using those 4 words in everything that I do. Think about it and do it. Do the right thing in every situation that I encounter. And that's all white people got to do. We don't need a long sermon. Spike Lee got it correct in a movie about the race issue called Do the Right Thing. Played by R.C. Davis. That's the instructions that he gave a young black person, played by Spike Lee, in the movie Do the Right Thing. Spike Lee wanted to know advice from the mayor, the honorary mayor in the black neighborhood. R.C. Davis played that part. And he says, I got one thing to say to you. Do the right thing. He said, that's it? Say, yeah. I'm not going to preach no sermon. It ain't necessary. Just do the right thing. You know the difference between doing the right thing. You know when you're doing something you ain't got no business doing. You know, so just go out and do it. And that's all we really have to tell white people. We don't have to have long seminars and all that. There's somebody from the back of the room will say, you know, just shout out if you have to, I guess, if they allow you to. Just do the right thing. How about that? How about just doing the right thing? Try that on for size. We'll say it, but put some substance to it, and everything will fall right in place. And that's one thing that I really wanted to say this morning in my opening, but I chose something else. But while I'm on it, while I got the opportunity to do it, I'm saying, you know, what is it? How come I ain't solved the race problem? How come ain't nobody else solved it? Because enough of us don't want to do what? The right thing. Mr. Spike Lee got it correct. First time around. Whether you knew it or not. That should be on every T-shirt. You don't need a whole lot of different T-shirts, Black Lives Matter and all that. Just say, do the right thing. See, that's the action part. We need the action now, not just another slogan. Just an instruction. Do the right thing, okay? How about trying that? In everything that you do, male-female relationships, do the right thing. It's like magic. It's real simple. Neely Fuller didn't come up with that one. But that's it. Okay? I'm emphasizing it now. And I'm giving a tribute, a shout-out to Mr. Spike Lee. It's right there at the movie. What he told the mayor, R.C. Davis, if anybody remembers that scene.
I
the movie list. And the character played by Spike Lee says what? He said, is that it? I mean, after all this carnage and whatnot, and, you know, and all whatever's going on, and after Mookie got choked to death and all like that, he said, how are you supposed to respond to it? That's the instruction you're going to give me as an elder black guy? He said, yeah, just do the right thing. How about that?
Okay.
That's all I got to say. End of story. Okay, so we can all concentrate on that.
Okay. Wasn't it, just asking, wasn't it radio Raheem that got choked and not
Yes,
Mookie?
that was
Okay,
the person that got choked in it, and that you know,
right,
and so they wanted to, you know, and they run the Italians out of the neighborhood and all like that. I mean, you know, we ain't got no brothers on the wall.
Okay.
You know?
I just wanted to be clear about that, so that didn't want to make anybody messed up on that. I thank you, Corey, from Milwaukee, for your call. Brother Muku, hang on for a second. Mr. Fuller, corrective action items said this concerning the previous conversation about high-value people. She said, I've heard this term used repeatedly. And then the question was asked, are high-paid professional athletes warriors, quoted, for racism, white supremacy? That was a question. And then it says, is LeBron James a high-valued man? In other words, valuable to the racists. In your opinion, since I believe that you may know of LeBron James, and you have at least this morning heard the term high-valued man, would you consider that he would be valuable to the racists as a, quote, high-value man?
Well, first of all, you can't be a man under the system of white supremacy if you're black.
Okay.
There's no such thing as a black man. We're all boys. Boys have to be taken care of. That's the difference. What's the difference between a man and a boy? A man takes care of other people and has the means to do so. So there's only one man on the planet, and he's white, according to logic and according to the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
So that takes care of that right now. I mean, right out of the gate. So in answer to the question about specifying some black person, no such thing as a black man in the system of white supremacy. Not one. It's impossible. It's impossible. All right? So that takes care of any name that you name. Look, if you're a black male, look at yourself. Are you classified as a black male in the system of white supremacy? In 2023, you are not a man and never will be as long as the system of white supremacy exists. You'll just be a boy that grows in the bigger size. That qualifies for boy. Boys are subject to white supremacy. If you're subject to white supremacy, you're not a man. And correspondingly, a black female is not a woman. She's a girl. She can do a lot of things that women do, but there's only one woman in the house in the system of white supremacy, and she's white. Just one. Not brown, not black, not tan, not yellow. White.
White.
Why? Because they are supreme people of the planet. They are the people that, I keep saying it, and the evidence shows it. Everybody wants to know which way did the white people go, who is black or a person of color. Oh, we can't get no help. I mean, you know, I don't know how to help myself. I got, which way did the white people go? Oh, my goodness, everything's falling apart. I don't see nothing but people that look like me. It ain't nothing happening but misery. I got to get away from here. That's what the borders are all about. The white supremacists have set up a system that says, you got to come to me. You got to come looking for me with your babies in your arms. You die in the desert. You do anything to find out which way I went. And I don't want all that be crawling up to me. I mean, you know, I've set a borders. I want to regulate this thing. I know I'm supreme, and you know it. But you got to go through procedures. You just can't keep all storming my gates. Give me some breathing room. That's what the white people are saying all over the world. You're chasing after me, and at the same time cursing me. Well, what does the code say about that? That's how you set it up, white people.
Okay.
That's how you set it up. This is your fault, because you set it up that way.
Yes, sir.
You made everybody dependent on you by force.
By force.
Not by choice.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fuller, for answering that statement that was made in the chat room. That people who don't know can go to blogtalkradio.com, and you can get in the chat room. Just click on go to shows, and then you want to get the Produced Justice show, and then the chat room is available to you. Okay, let's go to Baltimore, where I first heard the term. It's probably been out for a long time, but the care unit man. That's Brother Muko. Long time. Brother Muko, get ready. I'm getting ready to put this cursor right there. Let me see here. Brother Muko, I think I got you. Go ahead, Brother Muko.
Greetings, Mr. Bobby. Greetings, Mr. Fuller.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Fuller, you are Mr. Fuller, you are definitely blessed, man. Thank you for this morning. You're right about that. The white supremacists made this up, and I want to thank you for your question, everybody, today. And I'll answer that question in short. I have to agree with you. I don't know how to dismantle the system of white supremacy, at least not yet. But I will say, and I want to ask you a question. I want to make a short statement. My statement first is, in my opinion, this is evidence of non-white people not being the smartest about what white supremacy is and how it works versus white people. And I constantly hear white people on a whole, a collective, say that black people are more experienced in what racism, white supremacy is. And I would like to point out for the fact that this is evidence of what Mr. Fuller is saying in a question that he asked, that white people and white supremacists together are the smartest and the most intelligent and most informed about what white supremacy is and how it works. They made it. And Mr. Fuller just said it. But my question for you, Mr. Fuller, I have a Twitter care unit now, and I value them. And the question that I want to ask for you is, can you clear up the importance of race classification and the way that it's set up now and the confusion it causes, and the correct way or the better suggestion that you suggest that we should look at race classification to eliminate confusion, particularly arguing amongst victims?
So the question is, what are the classifications according to the code?
Yes, sir.
Okay. White, non-white, white supremacists. 1, 2, 3. These are the three racial classifications according to compensatory counter-racist logic. Any other classifications are incorrect. Now, last time I checked, I understand it's somewhere between 23 and 27, depending on what source you use. But I think on the last census it's 23. I think it's 23, 22 or 23 classifications of race, including something called some other race. That's a classification. all the races that are listed, Pacific Islander, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But then they even have one classification that's called some other race. Now, if I was looking for some other race, what would that some other race classification look like? That's the first question. How does some other race? If you had a police call and whatnot, or you were describing a person that was applying for a job, they say, "Oh yeah, it says the race of the person was some other race." The Clyde, can you tell me what that means? What did the person look like? How did the person get that kind of classification? I wouldn't know how, if they were asking Neely Fuller. I wouldn't know how to answer that question. If the person introduced themselves rather to me. Well, now I'm neither black nor white or African American or Pacific Islander or any one of the 23 in the Northwestern Hemisphere classifications, other than I'm some other race. Now I say, well, how do I describe you to somebody else? Describe me as some other race. I just told you. You got a hard of hearing? That's the classification. Well, I'm one of them. You're looking at me. So describe me as some other race, and don't describe me as nothing else. Don't describe me as black, white. Just describe me as what I just told you. That's a classification. Some other race. Now I'm out of here. And don't describe me as nothing else. So when the supervisor comes around and say, well, this person that applied for this job, what's the racial classification? Some other race, sir. What? Some other race. That's what the person told you? Say, yeah. And that's a classification. Well, what does the person look like? Well, he looked like he could have been, I don't know, Pacific Islander? See, so in answer to the question, the code says, you're either white or you're not white. That's the criteria for the entire world. You're white or you're not white. Make up your mind, sir, which is it? But we want the truth. Because only the white supremacists decide who's white and who's not. In answer to the question. Now, I'd like to say this to the entire listening audience. Back in the 1960s, I think, because my memory doesn't serve me well sometimes, it was Holiday Magazine. They had articles about Africa in that issue of Holiday Magazine, if I remember correctly. And it had a picture of a member of the Watusi tribe. Evidently, it was somebody of importance because it seemed like he was sitting on some type of throne. And if I remember correctly, they said he was a king or something like that. Watusi tribe in Africa. The photograph that took up a whole page showed him. And he was very, very dark. I would say genuinely black. And he was wearing, if I recall correctly, all white. So the black really stood out. He was wearing robes. And he was sitting down, and it described him as a member of the Watusi tribe. And it said in the article talking about this particular person as being basically Caucasian. and implied, don't let the color fool you. Because members of the Watusi tribe are basically Caucasians. Meaning, well, everything I've been told, white. That even though he's black, he's really white. Now, that was in Holiday magazine. Now, to me, that's confusing. But there's a song that even says, you know, everything is wrong is right today, black is white today, or something like that.
Okay.
Anything goes. See, so I just thought I'd throw that in there. The white supremacists say anything.
Anything.
That stands out in my mind even now. That goes back in the 1960s. Even though that black person that you were looking at, they said he had Caucasoid features, meaning the thin nose. And he didn't have thick lips. He's basically, even though he's black as he can be, midnight black, he's really white because he's Caucasoid. That's confusing to me, even to this day.
Yes, sir.
Anybody who can dig up that old magazine in the library, it's somewhere in somebody's library. They'll probably verify what I'm saying. Yes, Holiday magazine.
Holiday magazine. I forgot.
The issue was on Africa. It was a special issue about Africa.
All righty. Well, we're way over. Thank you, Brother Muko. We're way over for the first hour, so I'll have to conclude that and start the second hour. Thank you, Brother Muko. All righty. For those of you who have to go, sorry we went over a little bit, but hopefully we'll do better for that. Tune in next week and we'll try that. But for those of you who will be sticking around, we have about another hour or just a little bit less for the second hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., which will start in a few seconds, so hang in there. For those of you who have to go, we'll hopefully see you next week. Stay tuned for the second hour. All righty, welcome back to the second hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. To get in contact with the show, you know the number, but for those of you who are new, here it is, 516-453-9921. And if you have any questions, just press the number 1 button and get in line. Don't be scared to ask your question. As you can see, Mr. Fuller takes his time in answering the question as thoroughly as possible to cut down on any confusion. If you are a first-time caller, make sure that you give the call screener your name so that I can give you a proper introduction without butchering it. You can also get me by going to Gmail. Gmail is 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. Now, bear in mind that when you do that, your Gmail may not and probably will not, capital N-O-T, not be read on today's program. Sometimes they are, but most of the time they're not. But at a certain time, when we are don't have as many online callers, then your Gmail will be read. Some people think that, because they get one in there, that it'll be read on today's show. That's not true. So don't get upset. Don't get alarmed. It will be read at an appropriate time, and I will let you know that. And lastly, you can also go to the chat room. All you have to do is go to blogtalkradio.com, and you want to make sure that you click on, programs. And the program you want, once you click that on, is the Produced Justice Show. You click on that, and then the chat room is available for you to do that. All the books and materials on this program you can get by going to ProducedJustice.com. We went a little long, so we didn't get a chance to do that now. So let's do that starting right off. And my brother in the Talif, I'll get to you after Mr. Fuller talks about his book. Mr. Fuller, thank you again, and let's begin the second hour speaking about your book. So take it away, Mr. Fuller.
Yes, the book is addressed to people who perceive themselves as being victims of white supremacy. And I'm going to say this again for reiteration, and I have been saying it, but probably not enough, so people don't get confused. The book is not for people who perceive themselves as not being victims of the system of white supremacy. The book does not apply to them. You can read it, and maybe I think you should, if you just want information, but the book doesn't really apply to you, sir or ma'am, if you do not consider yourself to be a victim of the system of white supremacy, that you don't consider yourself to be mistreated by a system or dominated by a system of racism, that you are free to do what you please as far as anyone who has racism in mind against you. You are not subject to these persons, these white persons, who practice the system of white supremacy and have victims called victims of the system of white supremacy. The book is not for you. And it's addressed to the individual victim, not as a collective. And why is it? It's called a compensatory code. Why is it called compensatory? Because when I wrote it, the compensatory code book, that's a cliche name for it, one of the subtitles, or really one of the equal titles of the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept. And it's basically one book, even though it has an additional volume called the Word Guide, but it's basically the same book. In fact, anything, even the notes that I have, are all the same book because it's the same problem, called the race problem of the people of planet Earth in 2023. And people who are victims of the race problem should be trying to solve it. So that's what the book is really about. You trying to solve the problem as an individual, not paying a whole lot of attention to what others are doing, whether they're doing their part and all like that. The book is not about that. And the book actually emphasizes that you don't pay too much attention to what other people are doing other than just to seek information to help you to do what you are doing. That's the only reason, not to criticize or to evaluate or anything like that. Just for information to help you solve the race problem as an individual person, just you, whomever you are. If you think that problem needs to be solved, say, that's me. This book is addressed to me. I'm going to solve the race problem. Now, other people can do whatever they're doing, and hopefully they're trying to do what I'm trying to do, solve the race problem, because I think it needs to be solved, and that's how you look at it. I'm saying to the individual reader. And white people can read it and see what they think, and but it's not addressed to them. No white person. The book is not addressed to white people, but it does cover things that white people do, things that are harmful, things that are not, in different spots within the book. That's what the book is about. But it's addressed to victims of white supremacy. Things to think about it, and how to think about it, some suggestions, they're all suggestions, that you can accept or reject. You accept them or reject them. One of the first persons I talked to about the book after it was first published, the 1984 edition, told me that he couldn't find any use for it at all. Well, that's exactly the way the book is supposed to work. If you find use for it, use it. If you don't, pass it by. And probably pass it on to someone else if you don't find anything in it that you don't think you'll ever have to use, or think you should use, or can use. Use for what? To help solve the race problem, which is the biggest problem that you possibly will ever have. Everything that you do in 9 areas of activity. So that's what the book is about. What to do, what not to do. What to say, what not to say. That's basically all it is. It's poorly written, I will say that. But it's one of the best of the poorly written books on counter-racism ever produced, in my opinion, in my honest opinion. You can get it by going to producejustice.com.
Okay, producejustice.com. Okay, before we go to my brother in the Yo, for those who don't know, Yo is short for Youngstown. A topic has come up in the chat room, Mr. Fuller, and I want to know if you are familiar with this, and it goes like this. So-called Asian students are leading the cause for colleges to end affirmative action. It's going to the Supreme Court this week. And then there was a website. There's a website that is information on in the chat room. They are saying that these Asian students are saying they aren't being admitted to these institutions in spite of their exceptional grades due to spaces being set aside for affirmative action. Affirmative action will most likely be struck down this week in the so-called Supreme Court. Have you heard of this, Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Would you care to elaborate on that, and then we'll go to the question in the Yo. What's going on here, or your opinion on this?
The white supremacists run all of non-white people's business on this planet. So if people who are called Asian or call themselves Asian, and you will call them that if that's what they ask to be called, can tell the white supremacists that they are being mistreated. If they are people of color, that's what the textbook is all about. Whatever it is that you think is mistreatment, and you're a person with color in your skin, tell the white supremacists what the problem is. They're supposed to solve it. We're proving we can't solve much of anything. We, meaning non-white people. We go to that's why we're asking white people, affirmative action or whatever you want to call it. I got a problem, and you can solve it. So the white people have the job of solving the problem to their satisfaction. That's what everybody who is non-white is supposed to be doing. Turn to white people and say, is there any white supremacists in the house? That's it. That's the formula.
Mm-hmm.
And if they say, yes, I'm supreme over all you dark people, I'm supposed to be. What's the problem? Why are you coming to me? You say you got a problem? Well, I know how to make problems and I know how to solve them better than anybody. So it's logical you would come to me with your dark self, your skin color self. You got color in your skin. Naturally, you come to me. So in answer to the question, they're doing the correct thing. They won't ask me nothing. They're not supposed to. I don't have nothing. Nothing I can give people who are called Asians or Chinese or nothing else with color in my skin. I'm begging just like they are. So everybody who has needs, like babies, because that's what we all are. If you're non-white on this planet, you're a baby. compared to the white supremacists. So babies ask people who take care of babies to take care of babies.
Mm-hmm.
So to the white supremacists, I say, take care of your children.
Yes, sir.
I can't demand it, but I can ask it, because babies can't demand nothing.
Okay. I didn't get that story, but I'm glad that it was pointed out. Thank you, Rita 888, for pointing that out. All right, let's go to the yo. And Talib, get ready, Talib. Let me see if I can move this thing over there. All righty, my brother. Let me see. Come on. There we go. Good morning, sir.
Yes, sir. Top of the morning, Mr. Bobby.
Yes.
Mr. Fuller, top of the morning to you. Quick question, Mr. Fuller. You don't have to answer now, but I heard about the sonic boom from the jet that was trying to get you. I just wanted to know if you heard the sonic boom. I got a bunch of friends in the DMV that said they heard the jet. It was a plane that crashed. They scrambled an F-16 or something to chase it. Everybody heard a big sonic boom over the area. But anyway, Mr. Bobby, you pretty much segued into the question, almost the question I was going to ask Mr. Fuller. But I'm going to read something first from page 117, and I promise you I'll make it quick. It said, it is important for all people to know and understand that according to the compensatory counter-racist science, whatever any person says or does must never be confused with what another person says or does. Now, my question is, in reading that in the education part of the book, and I'm not sure if Mr. Fuller have seen it, but I know, Mr. Bobby, you've probably seen it all over the country. If you notice, a lot of these, and a lot of them are brown skinned, but they have had some so-called white, they're getting to the day of their graduation, and for some reason they're told they can't graduate either because they got the wrong shoes on. The one lady had pants on, and then some of them saying that they can't graduate because their grades or they acted up in school. Mr. Fuller, my question is, Mr. Fuller, is that another part of the confusion that the white supremacists do? Because wouldn't you think if these students had a problem, they would tell them beforehand before having them and their families show up, and then find out that they can't graduate now? So like I said, Mr. Bobby, you kind of segued on a little bit what I was talking about when you mentioned education. And I did see that Asian piece. As a matter of fact, I know an Asian family who owns a store. Their daughter was a part of that. But anyway, I'm going to end it. Mr. Fuller, I appreciate you. Mr. Bobby, I appreciate you. And I'm waiting to hear your response. And I'd like to stay on and listen.
Okay, thank you, Brother Tiddy. All right. Mr. Fuller?
If I understand the question, the answer is, according to the code, any problem that black people, non-white people have, the white supremacists are supposed to solve it. So if black people don't have the correct clothes, or they did something incorrectly, or black people killing each other, which we do by the bushel, that's the white supremacists' fault. We are their children. We are their illegitimate children, every last one of us. So anything that we do that shouldn't be done is their fault. It's supposed to be, you raise your children if you're a person who has the authority to raise children. The white supremacists are the they are the sponsors or the illegitimate parents of the non-white people of this planet called Earth ever since the beginning of the system of white supremacy. That's what it means. Supreme. Illegitimately supreme. It's illegitimate. It's something that shouldn't be, but it is. So anything that happens to any non-white person anywhere on this planet, and that thing shouldn't happen, is the fault of the white supremacists. That's anything. Any kind of disorder, anything. Why? Because they took charge of everything, not some things. So any kind of conduct or any failures of any kind of black people anywhere on the planet in 2023 is the fault of the system of white supremacy and the white supremacists who make up the system, racist man and racist woman, collectively. All of them are to blame for anything that non-white people do that shouldn't be done. Why? Because they are in charge, because they took charge of the entire planet. And they brag about it. They brag about it. So anything that goes wrong on any kind of job I've ever been on, it's like the captain of a ship. You come aboard a ship, and all the sailors are drunk. Some of them take a swipe at you. I mean, they try to hit you in the head with something and try to stab you. What you do, if you want to really handle this situation, to use the ship analogy, anybody that's been in any kind of Navy or merchant marine or something like that, you go straight to the captain's cabin and say, what's going on here? And the captain's not supposed to turn to you and ask you what's going on. The captain is supposed to know what's going on in his or her ship. And anything that isn't supposed to happen, and it's happening, who is to blame? The captain. The captain of the Titanic was to blame for the Titanic sinking. That's the law of, that's what you call maritime law. Well, counter-racist law means who's the captain here? Who tells everybody else what to do and they better do it? White people who practice white supremacy tell non-white people what to do and they'd better do it. That's what you call white supremacy. They are the captains of the ship. I know it went a long way around to answer that question, but that's the main point to be made. That's the only point to be made. Anything that happens to non-white people on the planet in 2023, anything that non-white people are doing that they shouldn't be doing, it's the captain's fault. The white supremacists. They took charge. They are our educators. We don't know anything except what they teach us of any value. And the things that they didn't teach us, that's their fault too. Why? They're in charge. That's why. The person in charge is always to blame for anything that goes wrong. Particularly if the person took charge without permission. Gather people up and chase them down and then make animals out of them. Fill them up with drugs and all like that, and then complain about their behavior. Some nerve. But they got it. That's what they do. That's why white supremacy has to be replaced with a better system.
Yes, sir.
A system of justice. Otherwise, everything is going to be downhill forever.
All righty.
They know that.
They sure. They
know how to produce justice too, in 15 minutes. But they don't want to.
Absolutely.
The evidence shows that.
All right. Thank you, Talif. Let me go to a Gmail. This comes from overseas, and the so-called concept of the United Kingdom. It says, Drake, it says, Dear Mr. Fuller, I recently made up a quote that came into my head on the bus the other day, and I would like you, Mr. Fuller, to hear your comments on it. The quote is as follows: a cliched image of the successful, that's in parentheses, quotations, black male with a white woman on his arm has done as much damage to the image of black males globally as gangster rap music has done. These types of sexual arrangements have been the biggest failed experiments in any attempts to solve the race problem, and they should be written about and spoken about constructively in that regard by the victims of racism. End of quote.
That's what the textbook for victims of white supremacy that I have written says. That's in the textbook.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
he said he would like to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that takes care of that. Now, that's my statement. That makes the system of white supremacy stronger. Why? Because it's happening under the system of white supremacy. You get rid of the system of white supremacy, then it's bedtime for black people and white people. Only then, before you even consider it. Otherwise, the white person is taking unjust advantage. Just another way of taking advantage of the system of white supremacy. When a white person has sexual intercourse with a non-white person in the system of white supremacy. It's the prisoner-warden analogy. That's what that is. That's what that arrangement is. A white person having sexual intercourse with a non-white person in the system of white supremacy is like a prison master taking advantage of the prisoner. The non-white person is the prisoner. We are prisoners of war. So the warden of the prison master, goes into the cell and has sexual intercourse with one of the prisoners, and then comes out of the cell and slams the door. That's what's happening when a non-white person has sexual intercourse with a white person in the system of white supremacy. I gave that not maybe the best analysis or the best expression of it. I tried to make it simple. That's all that's really happening. Comes out of the cell and slams the door because there is a barrier there, the barrier of color. That white person can go anywhere and do anything, correct or incorrect, and get away with it as long as it has the approval of the other white supremacists. Because no black person is in position to overrule any white person on this planet in 2023 without other white people agreeing with it. That's how you know it's white supremacy. So that's just another way of taking advantage. A slave master taking advantage of a slave. That's not equal. That's just Sally Hemings and Thomas Jefferson all over again. That's what we got now. When a white person is in bed having sexual intercourse with a non-white person, that's Thomas Jefferson, Sally Hemings in 2023. Same thing. Hadn't changed one bit. The needle hasn't moved one bit. That's not progress. You save the bedroom for last. Every female understands that. Let's have some communications first. Let's solve my problems. My rent is due. I mean, females say that all the time. white ones too. So you think you're just going to see me on the street and, and just walk up and take me by the arm and waltz me to bed? You can do that if you're a conqueror, like the white supremacists are. But no, if you're going to do things in an orderly, logical, equal way, you get my permission. Don't put me at a disadvantage and then ask, okay, you can get fed if you go to bed with me. Otherwise, I will keep you from having food. Well, after a while, that wears anybody down. And that's what the white supremacists are doing when they have sexual intercourse with non-white people in the system of white supremacy. You're just telling the prisoner of war that you have, I'm not going to feed you. Doesn't make any difference how they approach you, because that's already the situation. We're not equals. Sexual intercourse is supposed to be with equals, strictly, not with unequal people.
All right.
And that is the correct way to do it. It's supposed to be a mutual thing with no strings attached.
Okay.
Certainly no chains attached.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Fuller, for answering Greg Barrington's question over in England. That was his question. Thank you for commenting on his question. Okay, you're listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. here at ProduceJustice.com. We have about 30 minutes to go in today's program, and I hope you are listening and responding. And for those who would like a question, all you have to do is call this number, 516-453-9921, and press the number 1 button if you have a question for Mr. Fuller. And if you are a first-time caller, you can just tell the call screener that you are, give them your name, and you will be heard today. You can do that. You can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y. Excuse me. You can Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com. Now, I cannot necessarily promise you that your question will be read today, but it does go into a rotation, and when they send it up, okay, we'll do that. But it will be read at a time, and I will give you a notice so let you know what's happening on that. You can also go to the chat room by going to blogtalkradio.com. You want to make sure that you click on programs. And once you do that, then the list of shows will come up, and the Produce Justice show is what you want. You click on that, and then you're able to go into the chat room. And occasionally when you go in there, I will lift up a chat off of there and ask Mr. Fuller a question, or someone has made a statement that Mr. Fuller does respond to that statement there, and we'll go from there. But do not use a chat room to ask me to ask Mr. Fuller a question, because it's just simply not going to happen. That's what the Gmail is for and the number is for. With that in mind, remember this, that all the books, or rather the book that you can get, is at ProduceJustice.com. ProduceJustice.com. I would suggest that to understand a lot of what's going on, that you may want to purchase this book. You may want to do that. And the book is available overseas, in England, understand, in Canada. And for some reason, it seems to be making its way down into South Africa, because I get quite a few notices from South Africa. So something is going on, and it's spreading. So that's a good thing. That is a very, very good thing. But ProduceJustice.com is where you would go for all the information that you would like to get on this. Okay, let's see. Back to, okay, let me see here. There you go, Mr. Bobby. There we go. All right, back to the Gmail. Let's see, this comes from Mr. Smith. He says this, Mr. Fuller, greetings, Mr. Fuller. Do you watch classic black sitcoms like Sanford and Son and The Jeffersons? If so, are there lessons in those shows, in your opinion? Thanks.
Well, there are lessons in everything that's presented to you in answer to the question broadly. But it depends on how much time you have and what you're actually looking at those shows for. There are lessons in everything that's around you. It's a lesson to be learned. Just walking into a room and looking around that room, the furniture, what's in the room, what's not in the room, what is the room for. There are lessons in everything, everywhere you go. It's a matter of having your mind, your antenna up, you might say, to pick up what the lessons might be. And according to the code, you look at things where you think you'll find the most lessons in the form of solutions to the problem, that whatever the problem is you're trying to solve. Because people, according to the code, are here on this planet called Earth in 2023 to do what? Solve problems. Now, how do you come to that conclusion? Through logic. And what does logic say? People are here to solve problems. And how do you come to that conclusion? Because you have problems. You could have been created, and the world around you created, in such a way that people didn't have problems. But the first thing you learn when you come into this universe that we're in is that if you are a person or a creature, you do have problems, because problems are presented to you. I think at what you might call in a slang term, a gut level, babies understand this even before they are able to understand. They instinctively perceive that they are in a situation where there are problems. Why? Because babies, in the form of creatures called people, come here crying. They come into the world crying. They don't come in laughing. So the baby, evidently, as far as logic is concerned, I think, come here crying rather than laughing, because the babies perceive they are in a messy situation, that there's all kinds of problems to deal with that they weren't dealing with before they were ushered into the world from whence they came, into another world. So the babies are not crying in the womb because the babies don't have problems in the womb that they perceive. But when they take that first breath of air, just the air itself, and this air is pretty bad on account of people, the baby evidently picks that up immediately and lets out a what? A yell. And that's when they say the baby is alive.
Mm-hmm.
But the baby is actually in a deadly situation. And that is the kind of world that people have made it. The baby is aware of this. What in the world is going on? That's what that baby is saying when it cries. Y'all let me off at the wrong station. The baby wants to go back into the womb. And really, truth be told, after people get here, that's really what they want to do, because they want that comfort that they had, but they're not going to get. They got to face these problems.
Mm-hmm.
The only way to get that comfort again is to be dead.
Yes.
That's the logic.
That's the yes, sir. Okay. Let's see here. Going back to the chat. This comes from Mario. Let me say this, Mario. Now, you asked 4 questions, which I'm going to have to break up, but I will ask. I'll just go from there. And that person that is in the zip code 510, you're up on the screen, but your name isn't. So give the call screener your name. In the meantime, Mr. Fuller. This comes from Mario. He has 4 questions, but this is the first one. He says this, Mr. Fuller, what should be the codified response if an offspring wants to engage in anti-sex or sex with a person classified as white, and does not accepting this behavior mean that we do not love them unconditionally?
You have to make up your own mind about that. If you are considering yourself to be the guide for the person who is your offspring, who you recognize as being your offspring, you should think about what you're telling the person, and the criteria always is this constructive? Does whatever you're recommending be done going to produce a constructive result? That's what the entire book is about. That's what the entire reason for, logically speaking, everybody's existence is about doing what is the most constructive thing to do out of all the choices to be made. And basically, it's what I said, it's like what Mr. Spike Lee said, do the right thing. But you sort through all the things that are being done and say, now, what is the right thing to do? What will produce, according to codified language, the most constructive result? Now, the code says emphatically, there's no reason to believe that any activities of that type by anybody, and under these conditions, within context of how the world is set up today, not going to produce a constructive result.
Yes, sir.
It's not going to produce a constructive result.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Okay.
Now, if it is going to produce a constructive result, just have the person enumerate what's constructive about it. So you want the most constructive result. It might be a number of constructive results, but does it produce the most constructive result? Because all people, particularly black people, it seems a lot of people of all types seem not to be too interested. Black people should say any move that anybody makes any time of day or night should produce a constructive result. Never anything that's non-constructive. Don't be involved in it. Don't promote it. Don't take pride in it, because you shouldn't take pride, according to the code, in anything the way people are now on this planet. Nobody, white or non-white, should take pride in anything. Why? Because everything is a mess. That's why. As long as somebody's being mistreated, everything is a mess. And that's how you look at it.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Something is out of order. You don't parade around taking pride in any kind of disorder, period.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Be good one. Wildebeest? Really? New caller alert. Let's go. Get ready, Jay in Oakland. Get ready, because I'm getting ready to put this cursor over there. Jay in Oakland, here we go. Get you in here, new caller. You're on, Jay. Good morning, and what is your question for Mr. Fuller?
Good morning to you. Good morning to Mr. Neely Fuller. I have a question. If one, let's say, finds himself amongst a crowd of individuals that may not be as educated or knowledgeable as yourself, but you find yourself amongst this crowd because of work training, and you're forced to be around them for, let's say, two weeks because you're in a training. How do you avoid confrontation if they perceive that you're like, you perceive, like, basically they think that they feel like you're too good, or they feel that you put off this energy that you're better than them, even though you're trying not to. So how do you prevent confrontation if you're amongst, let's say this group happens to be black people, and Yes, sir.
The revised expanded edition of the textbook on page 171, 172. I call it the catch-all pages. It's just 2 pages, 171 to 172. And first of all, you ask yourself these 4 questions. These 4 questions will always take everybody right where they need to be. Won't take everybody where they think they ought to be, but it'll take them where they should be. That's everybody. Now, the first thing, you address yourself. Then you address that to anything or anybody that you're talking to. You address the same questions, just within the context. If it's something involving you, then and if you are the person who's asking yourself, you ask yourself these 4 questions. Here they are. And they explain somewhat in detail on page 171, 172 of the revised expanded edition of the textbook. But I'm going to give them now. These are, you can't get lost questions. It always comes down to questions, because all problems are solved through the process of what? Questions and answers. Here they are. What do you, since you're talking about involving other people other than yourself, you ask yourself these questions first, but then you ask other people these 4 questions. What do you want me to do, sir or ma'am? Always be polite, regardless of how the other person is acting. What do you want me to do? Everybody has wants. They want something for themselves, or they want somebody else to do something or not do something. That's 24/7. Applies to everybody on the planet, no matter what the situation is. So in order to get order and going about doing things in the codified way, which means the best way, supposed to be, what do you want me to do? Evidently, they want you to do something according to the scenario that you laid out. What do you want me to do, sir? What do you want me to do? Not what I want to do or somebody else wants me to do. What do you want me to do? The person that you're talking to. And let them tell you. And don't interfere with the answers. Just move on to that second question after they answer the first one. And you never move to the second question until they answer the first question. That's codified law. Never move to the second question without the first question being answered. So the question is, what do you want me to do, sir or ma'am? And wait for the answer, and don't interfere with the answer. Okay, when you get that answer, you move to the second question. Why do you want me to do the thing that you want me to do? Why? And let them answer that question, no matter how long it takes. Even if they say, I have to think about it, I'll let you know tomorrow. That's the answer. So the next day, you say, I'm ready for question to be answered. Number 2, are you ready with the answer? Now that you're ready, are you ready? All right, third question. How do you plan for me to do what you want me to do? What's your plan? And wait for them to answer. They might say 5 or 6 pages and whatnot. They say, well, I can't get to you right now because the plan is about 10 pages of things I want you to do and why I want you to do them. Okay, so that's it. That's the answer. And you go according to whatever the plan is. If you've got any questions about the plan, you ask that. And then the 4th, and this is what you call the bottom line, and you really emphasize this question, the 4th question, just 4. What do you expect the constructive result to be? What do you expect the constructive result to be? If, going back to question number 1, if I do what you want me to do, it might be something they want you to stop doing. And you ask the same question. What do you want me to stop doing? Why do you want me to stop doing it? How do you plan for me to stop doing what you want me to stop doing it? They'll say, I plan for you to stop doing it by telling you, first of all, that you should stop doing it. Well, that's the answer. You say, now what do you expect the constructive result to be if I stop doing what you say I should stop doing? It's real simple.
Yes, sir.
But you'll find out that those 4 questions will cover anything that comes up anytime.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
If you know, and I hope you remember them, or you were jotting something down, or you go to the book to be reminded. But it's just 4. It has to do with what other people want you to do. And first of all, you start off with what is you want to do, because they may ask you these same questions, but it'll always take everybody where they need to be without what? Argument. Mm-hmm. So you don't going to get no argument. You just go with those 4 questions and stick with them.
Okay. Jay, may I suggest that you, this is just a suggestion, that you may want to purchase the book, the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, that you can get at ProduceJustice.com. The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept that you can get by going to ProduceJustice.com, ProduceJustice.com. And that, what Mr. Fuller just said, is on page 171 and 172. You can get that, and there's a lot of information you can get there. Listen, thank you for being a first-time caller, and don't be a stranger. Thank you very much. Mr. Fuller, something on or in the chat room, and maybe you can respond to this. And the question is not addressed to you, but it's a pretty good question. It's this. It says, thank you, Still Learning Too. It says, is Juneteenth and Black Music Month energy being displaced by LGBTQ Pride Month. What are your thoughts on that, Mr. Fuller?
Is what now? Is what replaced?
Is Juneteenth and Black Music Month energy being displaced by LGBTQ Pride Month?
I don't know. I don't know whether or not it's being displaced. I don't have any statistics. I would have to go around and find out what the figures are. If that's happening. But if it's something that shouldn't happen, if that is happening, well, one thing, Juneteenth, if I understand what that is, and I think I do, that's a celebration. Just like LGBTQ, and I understand 2 other letters have been added as of the last, to my knowledge, 48 hours, called IA or AI or something like that. I learned that yesterday. 2 more letters have been added to the LGBTQ alphabet, if you want to call it that. So you may have heard of it. I heard of it yesterday, but I don't know what it means. AI or IA. Probably some caller can call in and inform everybody about it. But I saw it on television yesterday. I don't know what it means. But now, getting back to the point, to the question, is Juneteenth being replaced by that? It could be. If the white supremacists want it that way, it will be. But what does the code say about all of that? Shouldn't be any of it. Shouldn't be in the Juneteenth celebration, which is what that's supposed to be, according to logic. No. Shouldn't be any celebration of anything. I don't care what it is in the system of white supremacy. Mm-hmm. Never. You don't celebrate nothing. I don't care what it is. That's according to the code. And not to say about LGBTQ pride and whatnot, heaven forbid. Definitely don't celebrate that until what? Until you prove that it has a constructive result.
Okay.
And Juneteenth shouldn't be celebrated. Why? Because there's no proof that it has constructive results. No celebration has.
Yes,
Black people have been celebrating this and that, and white people too.
Already.
What is going on after all of the celebrations? Take every celebration that you can possibly name, including graduation celebrations, high school graduates. Should that be celebrated? No, you're still graduating. Graduating, trying to get through all the problems that need solving. You're just beginning.
Okay.
You can celebrate after all the problems are solved. That's the basic code philosophy. After all problems are solved, then you can take you really don't celebrate then. You just, the code says you take a sigh of relief.
All righty. Before we go, Corrective Actions wrote this: white supremacists want anti-sex to be synonymous with black racial population tailoring. They are lacking. I'm sorry?
If that was a question.
No. It was a statement. I was reading a statement. It says white supremacists want anti-sex to be synonymous with black racial population tailoring. They are lacking and need to consume the people who have what they lack. They need to stop practicing incest. That was from Corrective Actions items in the chat. Mr. Fuller, I'm going to give you the last word as we conclude today's programming.
the last word is, why haven't I solved the race problem? That's the word I started with. So I'm going to end it with that. Okay. Everybody should ask that. Every time you get up, every time you wake up from a sleep, why haven't I solved the race problem? And then try to answer that to yourself, because you're the one that's asking that question.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We apologize for all the mistakes that we made. We'll try to do better next week. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, callers. Everybody have a good week. Thank you. ProduceJustice.com.